as I was listening, what I was also thinking is that when we look and understand more and more about ACE and the impact that it has, it leaves the space for us to also inquire into what are the normal conditions. What are the normal processes, conditions, and interactions that facilitate the child to flourish? And maybe if we could park for a moment the complexity of ACE, the task that's ahead of you, and just look at this. Look at what else can we bring to the picture. What else is there that can inform ACE by the fact that it's not there. So we're looking at what are the normal conditions that help promote resilience, character development, flourishing, self-actualization. Where is my little thing? There we go. And what I have here are some of the factors that can help us answer that question. We can regard those as the muscle of resilience. So resilience is a capacity that each one of us has, and it can be strengthened. It's almost like a physio of the mind. The more we work with that particular angle, that particular muscle, the more we expand. So the more we engage with delineating who I am, what do I stand for, the more we expand that capacity to own that self and feel at home within feel at home. So I am, I share, I like, my choices. These are 5 muscles of resilience. In the interventions that I use, this is part of my theory of change. If I want to strengthen this person's internal asset towards the drive to self-actualize, what do I work with under normal circumstances and then under specific circumstances? Somebody asked earlier, what would make, ideally, what would a psychological intervention look like if that is to be efficient? It's a complex answer, but through the many that I have had maybe the fortune to establish, there is a common theory of change. And that is linked, in my view, to an understanding what is the human condition. We are built in such a way that we can thrive. We need to identify what are those conditions. So this is one way to approach it, is to look at what are the normal variables, what are the internal assets that in spite of all that's happening, which we must not ignore, but how would that look like? And this is one way. For resilience to be developed, we also need, essentially, we need positive relationships. And this could be such a long conversation, but let me just give you one little taster of what I mean by that. In positive relationships, during childhood, shapes who we are, shapes the possibility of what we can become, and it also provides a base for self-resourcing. It's interesting, I started my career as a psychologist working in an orphanage in Romania, where I was born and grew up until I was 18. And in the orphanage, they gave me 40 children and said, do something with them. And the first thing I did is to create a positive environment. And what fascinated me is how little a child would take a little bit, like a crumb, and make out of it a mountain. The child is geared to survive and thrive. And that small amount of recognition, and I created a sense of belonging, that was already a very important platform that would help that child in the future. And I can say more about this as I was developing. So positive relationships, not only for the child, but I will bring it back to our own working relationships. Importantly, we have positive emotions. Fascinating studies have been done in America primarily, looking at something that they called the broaden and build theory of emotions. And they show that very sophisticated experimentation work showing that when we experience positive emotions, such as contentment, feeling sense of pride, feeling joy, feeling satisfied, that kind of reassurance, that in itself helps the mind be more creative, helps the mind be more experimental with counterintuitive initiatives, helps the mind bypass their own circularity of thinking. Positive emotions in themselves have a domino effect greater than we can imagine. They had this one interesting study, briefly tell you, that they had students before an exam condition. Some of them have seen a humorous video, and they were having a laugh and they felt comfortable together. Some were shown some disaster news. and then left with that, and some were just simply waiting in a room, neutral activities. What they found, which is not surprising, is that it took the students that performed better were those that had experienced humor and relaxed, better than all the other groups. But those that were always stressed and under pressure, of course, performed less. But what is important there is that we have one resource, experiencing positive emotions, that can have a domino effect with such an impact that it should be part of a daily habit of self-resourcing. And it's not done in the cheesy way of looking in the mirror and say, I'm worth it. It's done within a framework of existential development, in a framework of a deliberate aim to say, how can I resource myself better? Because if I resource myself better, those that I'm working with, I can take them further. And I have a grounding, and I can bring creativity to the fore. Self-awareness, self-value, most of the work that's needed in education through a positive curriculum is for the teachers to have opportunities to do this for their pupils. In the UK, I have to say the government is very alert to this. Positive education curriculums have been developed across. We have developed one for our local borough, and we now introduce resilient skills, skills for flourishing and self-resourcing as part of the daily curriculum. And that can also form part of the overall approach to preventing ISIS, because it resources individuals themselves to deal better with malign environments. It doesn't take away the need for us to intervene and remove the malign environment, but it allows the individual, and to stay with the call for working in an individualized way, it allows each individual to encounter the conditions that would better stimulate their own realization, their own search for meaning, their own flow, their own purpose. Relational skills, interpersonal skills, they're also important. I can talk more about it. Regulation of emotion, emotional intelligence is extremely important. Again, part of the positive education curriculum is to expand students' repertoires of emotions, to understand that emotions are feelings and precipitations that we cannot help. Often, we cannot help having certain emotions, normalizing that. But what we can help is how we make sense of them and what we do about them. And when I was working with children in schools as young as 11, it's surprising their capacity to handle this, regardless of the wording. It was a fear from the teachers that what we bring from psychologists is too top-down. Children understood it and loved it, because we found a way to look at expanding their range of vocabulary. And what we also did in every intervention is look to have moral stories or setups which they learn through doing. They learn through engaging in what we can call existential moment or aha moments. Those moments where something becomes so resonant, something transforms in here. So positive education curriculums can be structured around existential moments and lead transformation through participation. And it's not difficult to do. We had two huge existential moments here today. The video from Alison, that, whether we liked it or not, whether we want it or not, reached us. The thing that we share, which is our psychological condition, and the story that we heard earlier also reached us. It is not difficult to bring those moments together. And why are they important is that's when transformation does happen. It makes us confront the angst and the discomfort, and in doing so, we expand. And one of the reasons why asking someone the question, how is it for you? What are you experiencing? It taps into this, into the ability to be supporting in confronting the angst and the lack of consonance that's happening. Community belonging and a sense of justice and a sense of hope. Hope and future perspectives give us a scaffold to deal with current situations. If we have, in every intervention that I've used, if we were able to then integrate and have a sustainability upon the intervention, it engendered hope. It engendered usefulness. It engendered a journey for a new journey for a young person. It also provided alternative narratives to think of oneself. So looking also at what are the normal conditions, what are the normal positive environments is an important aspect of our journey to prevent ISIS. Positive psychology, let me just say a little more. So positive psychology is a recent discipline, but it has roots deep into the humanistic approach and existential approach, and is asking us to pay attention, pay attention and look to understand the message of internal assets are already predisposed to be stimulated and build resilience. And in terms of what we're doing today, it echoes not only perhaps our understanding in theorizing ACEs and how we can produce transformation, but how can we support ourselves in the work that we do. Asking different questions. What works well in spite of, and then creating a habit of welcoming challenges, of welcoming discomfort. If you're feeling discomfort and even boredom right now, that in itself can be a platform to stretch, to growth, to allow transformation. Asking different questions. So not only what is not working well, that's an important question because we need to then address it, but also what works well in spite of. And that may be at first counterintuitive because you are so overwhelmed by the complexity of what needs to be done. That's not working, that has been already a failure. But if one develops that habit and really buys into it, some interesting thing can come out. So asking both why this is happening and the how question, how do we address it? And that can be captured under something that perhaps you know and you're using every day, appreciative inquiring. So the what is working well in spite of, it's something that coaching psychologists do, positive psychology do, and it's shown that when you apply it to the workplace, it optimizes product, it optimizes the conditions, and also increases staff well-being. And let me just show, I'll share with you some examples of a study that has done so. So what works well in spite of? It is first of all a buying into, say, what if, as we heard earlier, let's just really engage with the exercise of what works well. List it down. What works well? You'll be surprised how much works well in spite of. Capitalize on positive emotions. I'll show you later more study on this. But there is one thing that struck me when I opened the books to look at positive psychology, and I was a very big critic to begin with. There was a study done in an organization, complex study, and what they showed is that for one negative emotion, such as I felt rejected by you, or belittled, or unseen, for one of those emotions, it takes 3 positive emotions to bring me to the level of where we were yesterday. So 1 to 3. Again, it's doing brainstorming and accept engagement with counterintuitive suggestions, like the boys that I described earlier this morning did. They thought it was an absolute bizarre thing to do. They've done it and they've learned something different. And recraft using strengths. If you look at HR systems across the globe and very much so involved in successful companies, they identify the strengths of their employees, place teams according to strengths, increase positive emotions, increase personal satisfaction and involvement, everybody wins. Identifying and knowing your strengths is an essential part, an essential tool of every organization that wants to look at building on assets in order to maximize their productivity. And in our case, we want to do the same with the young people or the older people that we work. We need to do it with ourselves first. And nurture creativity. The invitation was continue to be innovative in spite of. The invitation here is create a resilient world by becoming resilient yourself. Not an easy task. So the why questions. Research by Tony Grant in America, again in organizational positive psychology, has done a complex study, and one of the things that they've done in there, they have posed the problem and they asked the participants to say many things, but amongst those there were, if this is a problem, what are your thoughts about the problem? How do you react when you have those thoughts? So if the problem is, there are not enough money, I'm overwhelmed, how do you react? I try my best, but I'm going to burn out. And what impact is the thinking has on you? Well, I am lost, I don't know which direction to go. Now that is an important thing to put out there because it's the reality of the problems. Let's park that. He then asked another group of people, from the same organization, to talk about the same problem, but has asked them to consider something else. What thoughts do you have about possible solution? to the problem. Let's focus on the possible solution. How do you react and what are your thoughts? So they shifted from the why to the how question. Interesting findings. The solution-focused approach is more optimal than problem-focused approach. Problem-focused approach is necessary because we have to map out what is it that we're encountering. But solution-focused approach alongside it was more impactful. It involved more positive affect and generated a better and more strategic layout of goals and needs. And that's what we need to do, to be strategic about which direction, as everybody has said so this morning, how to identify this. Positive affect has a big impact on mood and action planning. If I don't get a sense of hope or a sense of at least that is working, I'm going to build on that. If it doesn't give me the frame that can engender planning, that will have an effect. So the combined effects of positive affect and solution focus emerge as the best conditions. Best condition for feeling self-efficacy. Okay, so I can make a difference. Actually, I'm not going to solve the whole problem, but I'm going to solve that and that and that. And one step at a time, we move forward. That is engendering hope, celebrating you, and putting you in the right frame of mind to do the best. Goal progression, again, it can help us be creative on how we're going to move from A to B. And action planning. And that is through a combination of positive affect and solution focus. So in essence, feeling good is beneficial, but feeling good with clear goals is the more optimal. We need to do both. What is the problem and what is working well? What is the solution? Because that is not just a cognitive exercise. It seems it has, at the human level, it has an impact which adds the momentum, adds to the resources that we need. This is the study I was saying, the reference is on the bottom. And the positive and negative ratio. If I could have one thing that you take from here, see if you can buy into it. Try it out. Reflect on even today or yesterday. Try it out. How the presence of hope, self-efficacy, self-reward, being recognized, being seen by yourself and others, that in itself, while you get on being busy with what you are, adds to developing your own character, developing your own strength, and that deliberate decision to say, I will engage with the journey that I'm going. Who am I? Where do I want to go? What is my meaning? When do I feel the best? Things that we cannot separate just because we are professionals. These are the things we want to transform in the people we work. As professionals, we have to do that too. And we are, it seems, wired up to take satisfaction and the satisfaction in reflecting at where we are, and satisfaction in making something that's meaningful and deliberately moving forward. That is not just a hippie statement, the people that were hugging trees. This is something, if you pay attention to it, it is an additional resource. You see sometimes speakers, they are very confident and very clear of what they do, and they inspire energy. You say, I'll follow you. They inspire energy because they are at home here, and I'm not sure we need to find out how one resources ourselves. But this is one way. One way already as part of your internal asset, and any therapist will tell you it's an essential part of the therapy we do with young people or older people, which is understand yourself better, decide what trajectory you want to go. So you've been in this trajectory, which trajectory do you want to go? And being recognized in such a way and being witnessed in such a way that you can do things for yourself, by yourself, towards a bigger picture. So here's an exercise, because it's back to you now. An individual draws the boundaries of himself as he establishes, and he establishes at the same time the battle. In short, once we decide what are the range of things we want to be aware about, what are the range of things that I want to engage with? You may dismiss what I say, I'm too busy to worry about this. Fair enough, you delineate your own battles, that way or that way. Those existential battles will remain there. Those moments when you have a bad day or a good day, they will remain there. So the invitation is develop or invest even more in the habit of a deliberate awareness of your own personal resources. This is technology. Hang on. No, I can't. My apologies. The exercise, I don't know. The exercise while we get that sorted out, is in the groups that you have, while we put that up, if you wouldn't mind going back to the groups you had earlier, precisely the same groups, please. And within that group that you have, turn to your colleague on the right and share one good thing from the past few days, let's say for the past 3 days. Share one good thing that you saw or you experienced or it happened to you. Don't question it, just take it counterintuitively, bear with it. So we have 3 minutes to do so. Back into your groups, kindly turn to the colleague on the right, share an experience, and then we move on. Any thoughts? It's not work related, okay?
And then you wouldn't not want to be the mum, but sometimes it's quite nice for them to ask dad as well. So sometimes it would be a joy to be hidden, but you wouldn't want to not be the mother.
We are on a similar page. Anybody wants to share before I share mine? Thank you. Familiar with Winnicott? No doubt. I use this as part of one of the components of the theory of change that I use for every intervention. Whether we have experienced ACE and we're struggling with the sense of that, whether we were fortunate to have a good enough environment, by that I mean Winnicott's term, good enough, each one of us goes through this. Each one of us has to learn to remain distinct while connected with others. Meaning that each one of us has to develop social skills where we present aspects of ourselves. We edit who you see. We edit that. And if nobody cares enough, skilled enough, pays enough attention to see us behind this thing, we're going to end up hidden and end up reminding, staying divisive, staying unseen. The message there is for the principle of self-care. Our relationship, our personal well-being is intertwined with another person. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote as a final line of his famous novel, hell is other people. There is no hell. It's just a recognition that well-being is not just this personal development. It seems that we need a witness. We need someone to witness us in such a way that I am hiding, meaning allow me to have this dance of I present who I want to present. And we're so dear and precious about these self-presentations. Make-up included, that's mine. We are dear about the decisions for self-presentation because every day we have a message. This is who I want you to see. When you look at me, I want you to see this. And that's part of effective social skills. And this is what brings again self-efficiency. I'm not a mother here, so I'm not talking as a mother and so on. But if we do it and we think we are the island that does it by themselves, we will remain trapped in this. And the longing, which is going to be hard to accept, a longing to be seen and recognized. So self-care for us and for the people we're working with. And if we don't want to take ourselves too seriously and actually want to develop, self-care cannot be done alone. Positive relationships, and for managers, positive leadership, positive environment of the kind that I want you to do your dance about hiding because you're a professional. I don't want to come to a point where you remain so hidden, therefore I've not developed or flourished you. As a manager, I failed. Self-care cannot be done alone. Have a look at this. And every time I work with a child, when I was able to see behind in a non-pathologizing, normalizing, celebrating way, we got the dance right. Winnicott wrote about this in his book, The Facilitative Environment, what is an environment that facilitates. And he also, this is a chapter that he has on the capacity to be alone in order to be developed. Now the exercise to you, because we're out of time. But this to me, if you're looking for a theory of change, I will invite you to consider this as one possible ingredient. Why is it important? It's going to stimulate also self-reflection and maintaining a positive attitude towards oneself is fundamental. So paying attention to your own journey of where are you going as an individual. Accept the fact that you are interconnected. You cannot do this alone. And sometimes if we expect the mother figure or the father figure in our company to, if I do well enough, she'll see me. Well, if she's too busy, she may not see you and you remain hidden, and that can become resentful, can become everything that's negative that narrows and shadows this good thing that you have. This is a serious part of social condition. We are not alone. We intertwine in a way that can be detrimental or positive. So what we want, what I'm suggesting is, if you would like to be deliberate about who you are, which direction you have, and mindful of the strategies you use to hide yourself, but be also mindful of the fact that you need someone to see you. Reframe, replenish. This counterintuitive. Somebody said once when I was brought up, we were brought up as Christian, somebody said, blah, blah, and I said, I can't, I'm on my knees. The revolution that we were going through, it was a very tough time, I'm on my knees. This priest said, this is time to pray. I never understood what he meant. In other words, I felt it then to say, you're stating the obvious, you're not helping. But he was helping. The more you are stuck, the more counterintuitive you have to think about it. Just stay with that thought. Gratitude. Really, gratitude is something that research is showing more and more to increase empathy and to therefore increase the ability to create positive relationships with others. And this, if we have time, or talk to me later, something that every time I spoke to chief executives, this is the one they booked me after. Giving up controlling to get greater control, talk to me if you want about that. Or think it for yourself, because what I've heard you doing, you are already engaging with it. The transformation we want to bring to the people we work has to first happen with us and be sustained. These are the strengths questions that you could use upon yourself, with your colleagues. I leave them there. It's something that you can see in the slides. For me, what matters, what is the nicest one? What brings out your best? That begins to tell you the cure of the pain. Just pay attention to that. What brings out your best? The more you do that, the more this person or these people or the thing that you're waiting or that needs to be seeing you will see you. Those young people are waiting for us to see them in trouble, see them recognize their value and so on. It's a joy to be hidden, disaster not to be found. What brings the best out of you? So I can see your strengths. And recognizing strengths, final activity, what I would like to invite you to do is, say that there, okay, is you have a set of cards. The spokesperson is responsible with the cards. Kindly open the cards on the floor, and there are two small exercises. So everybody opens a set of cards on the floor, kindly please, and then each one of you, in the most efficient, speedy way, takes one card. Maybe I'll speak on this. So we have all the cards on the floor. I can tell you more about the cards after. Those cards represent possible strengths. Task number one, you take turns and each one of you shares with the group two of those strengths. You pick up the card and say this and this, two strengths that you would like to have more of. You have 5 minutes to do it. There's another one, okay? You take turns and share it with the group.